Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Alexander, and I'm the Caribbean Regional Coordinator for Free the Slaves. And Free the Slaves is Secretariat to the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. Today, we have another episode of Member Spotlight for you. And here we'll be interviewing Ms. Gracie Carolina Gonzalez, one of our newest members of the coalition. And she'll tell us a bit about herself and how she got into this whole fight against trafficking in persons. Hello, Gracie. Nice to see you.
Hi, hello, how are you?
Doing great, doing great. It's great to have you on board as one of our newest members of the coalition. Especially your background is so varied, and I know that you have had a lot of experience working with survivors. So it's wonderful to add the skills and talents and abilities that you bring to the coalition.
Thank you, thank you. Well, a little about me. I am a psychologist. I graduated from Rafael Urdaneta University in 2008. So it has been 17 years so far of experience. And I have been working with communities vulnerable since I started to work as a psychologist. In Venezuela, I work at the Ministry of Prisons. Yes, and I work also with underprivileged communities as well as students because I was a lecturer at the psychology faculty in Maracaibo, Venezuela.
So you were a lecturer at the university?
Yes, for 2 years in the psychology faculty in Rafael Urdaneta University, the same university I complete my degree. Yes,
Great.
there. And well, in the past 7 years, I migrated to Trinidad and Tobago in 2016, and I started to work as a child guidance counselor at Living Water Community, specifically with migrants and refugees. And that is when my journey in this field of work started. That includes victims of trafficking, and I was providing mental health and psychosocial support services, counseling, including also reaching out to communities to provide capacity building, awareness raising, child protection, yes, SGBB, and then I work in IOM, International Organization for Migration, as a migrant counselor, and I was also providing mental health and psychosocial support for victims of trafficking and other migrants, and also doing protection services, including case management, including advocacy and capacity building.
Wow.
Then I moved to Panama to work with UNICEF. And in Panama, I work with migrants who cross the Darien Gap to continue their journey through Central America to reach to United States and Canada to apply for asylum. I was working in a camp in which the migrants reach and then they continue their journey. We used to receive 3,500 people per day sometimes.
Wow.
Yes, and different nationalities. At the point where I was working was mostly people from Haiti, from Venezuela, and from African countries and Asia. So we have a variety of nationalities there. Then I decided to come back to Trinidad and Tobago when the project ended, and I moved to work with La Casita, specifically in the program named Reset, which is a program of empowerment for survivors of gender-based violence.
Right.
And I worked there as a first responder. So my job was doing the intake as well as the referral for other services and also internal and external referrals and monitoring the progress of the cases. Now, currently, I'm working with Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago as a case management officer. In Children's Authority, I work with locals and migrants, and I provide support for victims of trafficking, specifically children. And yes, that's a little summary of my work.
Ah, that's a lot of experience, Gracie. And I enjoyed hearing, you sharing about that move to Panama, because even though it was a project, so it had its lifespan, you would have gained tremendous experience working with people from different nationalities. I mean, you mentioned Haiti and Venezuela from this region, but people from Asia, people from Africa who are also coming from such far distances. And again, the culture would have been different. Of course, the language would have been different. So to be able to adapt in those spaces with those different nationalities and provide the same quality mental health and psychosocial support for them, that would have been a tremendous experience. What would you think are some of the most memorable experiences you had working out there in Panama?
Well, you learn about to value what you have because the people who cross the border, they just literally go with the clothes that they have on, achieving, like pursuing a dream and try to risk their life to achieve that dream for a better life. So it's impressive how you find people who haven't eaten in days, who is sick because of they were drinking water for the rivers with a lot of mosquito bites, children that have no diapers, even no clothes, people who have lost uh, people because they didn't survive the jungle. So yeah, that's what impressed me more.
Uh, and you mentioned the children. I mean, we read about a lot of unaccompanied minors who are on this journey towards the United States. Is that something that you also saw, that a lot of children were on this migration journey by themselves, or were they with family members?
Yeah, we encounter 16, 15, 17 years old crossing the border to from the Darien Gap. Yeah.
Okay. So no parents, just as teenagers, they're on this move by themselves, looking for a better life.
Yes, some of them have no family in their home country because of any other reason. And some of them have family members who already crossed and they want to reunite with that family.
So there's a lot of desperation, a lot of poverty, and as you said, people making these sacrifices um, in hope of a better life.
Yes.
Hmm. And you found that the government of Panama was very supportive, and the governments in the other Central American countries were very supportive of the work that you were doing.
Actually, they were in Panama. They were happy for our involvement in the in this issue of migration. So in the camp, UNICEF was providing child-friendly spaces for children, self-care spaces for women, prenatal care, and also care for children, medical care. So they were very helpful about our intervention, and other people, other organizations such as Red Cross Society, IOM, UNHCR. Yeah, so they were very open, and I think they were very sensitized about the issue of migration. They used to be kind and understanding with migrants. Thanks God.
Okay, that's great. I know that you came back to Trinidad, you mentioned. So having that, I mean, breadth of experience working in Panama, how did you change the type of work that you were doing when you came back to Trinidad after that experience?
Well, for me, in terms of migration, we feel that the influx of migrants to Trinidad is big, but after seeing in my experience with Panama, I find that it's like this.
Very small, 3,500 people a day. That is a huge number compared to what we see here in
Yes,
Trinidad.
but anyway, the problem that we are facing in Trinidad is the cutting of funding. So even the people who need support, they have a lot of constraints in terms of the external aid that they can receive from different agencies. So I think that is our biggest challenge right now, the difficulties of finding funding to support in different ways that they need. Yeah, so I think what I learned the most was working in collaboration with other agencies, because in Panama we have a roster well established in which organizations have a role specific and we complement to each other. So I feel that that's why this coalition is so important, because we can complement each other.
So true. So very true. And I'm sure that there would have been a division of labor, as it were, based on specialty. So UNICEF, of course, would have had that role more with the children, and some of the other organizations would have assumed responsibilities based on their respective specialties. And are you seeing that now that you're back in Trinidad, working at the Children's Authority, for instance, that your experience in Panama and working with children there has helped in terms of improving your service delivery for children here?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, sure. No, I was asking if now that you're at the Children's Authority, are you able to use some of what you learned in Panama to help with the local and migrant children here?
Yes, definitely. One of the things that I learned is more like the sensitization about the reasons why a person decides to risk their life and why they're achieving a goal that generally is based on decided by needs. So yeah, that sense of empathy have increased towards me, and also in terms of identifying needs and addressing those needs too.
Okay, that's good. So, what are some of the things that you have been able to accomplish in your work for the past 17 years since you became a psychologist? What are some of the experiences that you think stay with you in your memory the most?
Well, I feel that working with communities and people that have vulnerabilities and different important needs or basic needs have been helping me to understand that it's not just psychological need, there's also a social component that is very important for the reintegration of these people to society. So when I work in prison, I understand that that pattern of behavior comes from somewhere, and it's important in terms of the social challenges and social environment that they were involved, that have promote that criminality. And I also feel that is similar things in terms of displacement for migration, because there are also affected by different social impacts or issues that are surrounding. It could be family patterns, poverty, lack of education, could be lack of documentation, lack of opportunities. So understanding that we need to not work just in mental health as just the mind,
Right.
is trying to work on that net that are surrounded to be able to provide a comprehensive support and create a real reintegration. Because what happened is that during COVID, for example, I remember that I used to go get a lot of referrals for people who was emotionally affected, right? But when I have those sessions with them, I realized that the biggest need was food, right? So if they don't have food, they will be, there's not that much that I can do as a psychologist, but I think that that's the priority to address. Let's find ways for these people to have something to eat.
Yes.
So that is how I have been working in psychosocial, not just pure, mind or feelings. It's understanding that it's rooted in other things that are also key and very important.
Yeah, and that is such a powerful statement because since COVID, a lot of people still have not been able to get jobs. And even now with the closure of certain types of industries, you're seeing that over and over again, that there's a greater number of people who are unemployed, whether they're locals or migrants, a greater numbers of people who are struggling on a daily basis to put food on the table. And we have to be able to meet their basic needs as well as their other needs. So that's definitely a key point. And as you mentioned, with respect to the influx of people who are already fleeing something that may have been a disadvantage to them, whether it was poverty, whether it was violence, and so forth, to come into a different environment where the culture is different, where the language is different, where they're being treated sometimes without love and compassion. And on top of that, still have to be struggling and facing so many other challenges. So I like the fact that you also had that experience in prison because, oof, feels like a lifetime ago. I was involved with prison fellowship and doing programs in the prisons and in the youth detention centers. So I totally agree with what you said. There are so many factors that shape how people were brought up, their value systems that lead them into making decisions that bring them into conflict with the law, where they hurt other people, but they themselves may also have been hurt and no one took the time to help them resolve some of their, whether it was adverse childhood experiences or other traumas that they have faced. So do you find that working at Children's Authority, you have the opportunity to help shape those types of values and help deal with traumas that the children would have encountered?
Well, in Children Authority, we deal every day with very serious issues and especially abuse. That is one of the main cases that we receive every day and all the time. Yeah, so we try to create an investigation and a case plan in which we try to alleviate the suffering, include a lot of legal aspects to deal with. It requires referrals for different services, for example, mental health and psychosocial support, medical. So it's a very comprehensive case plan. Also, we have cases in which we have to go deep into what is happening with the child and try to work internally and externally with different agencies, as well as things like accompany children to medicals, accompany children to the police, accompany children to mental health services. And in my case, I do a lot of interpretation because of the cases of migrant children that we have. I also provide support to my team to be as a interpreter for those. So yes, I glad that my bilingual skills can bring an asset to the work that we do. That's why I work with a lot of children that have been trafficked because most of them are from Venezuela. So we get to overcome that language barrier.
That's great. And it's not just the language barrier, but the culture as well. You would understand the cultural dynamics and so forth much better than some of your colleagues here from Trinidad. But there's tremendous value in having someone with your professional as well as cultural background working in a place like Children's Authority or even with IOM here in Trinidad. One question I'd like to ask of you, because I know that some of what you hear on a daily basis and some of the things that you would have experienced working with victims of abuse and trafficking can be overwhelming emotionally, even for you. Where do you see self-care as being relevant or important for persons who are working in this field?
Well, definitely, I think it's important to have a space to have your personal life in terms of being able to network with other things or people outside of work to bring a sense of tranquility and peace sometimes. Identifying the different challenges that first respond working can face, or even people who work on another level, but they are exposed as well to hearing traumatic experience all the time. So I think that identifying those challenges, for example, if you are feeling exhausted, having flashbacks, nightmares, feel lack of concentration, lack of hope, all those things are triggers that you should identify and seek for mental health support. But to prevent that, you have to find something that you like outside of work and do it. Also, talk to about your feelings with someone that you know. I think having friends and family is very important for the emotional support that they can provide. And we also have to understand that we need to be okay to be able to provide the better care for our victims as well. So I recommend that everybody consider this as a priority as well, and not just the worker, also the manager have to be understanding about these things and promote self-care. So for example, at Chilean Authority, we have a mental health days, and I think it's very considering that they provide this time for us to have a space as well to breathe.
That is so important. I think you just summarized that because it's not just the individual who's working and facing the trauma, but those who are not directly working with survivors of abuse and exploitation, they also need to know that mental health support for the employees is critical. Otherwise, there's a lot of people who burn out and then they're not able to continue to provide quality services to the clients. So that is such a powerful statement. Yeah. But I want to ask you in terms of the challenges that survivors face. Let's say like xenophobia, or any other types of challenges. Do you see that there are solutions that could be applied to make reintegration and rehabilitation of survivors especially easier here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, so in terms of the challenges, who are a lot, because we can identify lack of documentation, language barrier, xenophobia, lack of education, difficulties with job opportunities, the trauma experienced by the incidents that happened to them. So how we can help? I think everybody should know about trafficking, because I realize that a lot of people don't know what is trafficking, that trafficking is real, and that trafficking is real go to our context in Trinidad and Tobago. So I feel that instead of judging one person that you find a migrant, it's important to understand that people can have a story of a lot of challenges and trauma, and be sensitized about that, to be able to be understanding and empathetic and non-judgmental. I think that is very important. I will say that documentation is key, because you know that when you don't have documents, it's hard for you to access to different services, for example, for health services, education, employment. So I invite to the authorities, immigration authorities, I think if they can find a way to like regularize the status of migrants to prevent exploitation, because you know that if you are vulnerable about those things, you are a target for exploitation as well. So I think to promote a way to regularize migration is easier even for the government and for the person, because it will be less issues in terms of reintegration and independence for these people. Because if you don't provide that support, the people will depend all the time in aid, because they have no choice there. They cannot do things by their own because they don't have the opportunity to do things by their own,
Right.
to be more independent. So I think it's important, as well as uh, access to healthcare, because right now in Trinidad and Tobago, migrants have access just to emergency care, but we have a lot of migrants who have other chronic conditions and they cannot access to health. And for a minimum wage salary, it's not possible to afford private health services in Trinidad and Tobago. So I think that health is a right for all. And also the inclusion of children in the public education system is the same thing, in terms of that private education is costly according to what is the minimum wage here in Trinidad. So that's why most of the migrant children are encounter isolation at home and lack of, basic academic skills, because education is important for socialization, as well for the development of different skills that will help you in your adulthood. So I don't know if people is aware that migrant children don't have access to educate public education. Well, the government opened the access to children to public education, but just the children who are registered with the government exercise on 2019, but right now is a small portion of migrant children that we have in Trinidad. So I think we shall have considered that children don't make the decision by themselves to come, so they are not responsible for the consequences that happen around that decision. And if the parents made that decision was because of desperation most of the time. So yes, I think it's a based on the Convention of the Rights of the Child, that is a right, right? And it's an universal right.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Really good points. I know that government.
And also, in terms of the language barrier, if we provide services bilingually, so for them to access to the support, it's also important that they can be aware of what is happening in the country, what is accessible for them, if they understand through their language support. So yes, promote more bilingual staff, or having interpreters in different services, and also translate the information in, for example, in Spanish, is also very helpful, as well as providing education in terms of English as a second language.
Yeah.
Because they say anyway, if the person migrated to Trinidad and they are involved in a community that speaks English, it's fair that they also learn English. So providing these English classes by different organizations for free, I think will also help to increase their opportunities and their integration in Trinidad.
Thanks so much for sharing those tips, Gracie, and they make a lot of sense. I know through the activities of different NGOs as well, several of them have been offering services in bilingual services to migrants. I trust that that also helps to accelerate the progress that you were talking about. Um, Across the region, I know that there are different levels of engagement that some countries have with Spanish-speaking migrants or Spanish-speaking trafficking survivors, as opposed to us down here in the Southern Caribbean or Belize in the West, surrounded by other countries in Central America. So one thing I'd love to get your take on before we close is, if you could change one aspect of how people provide support to trafficking survivors, whether they're Spanish speaking, English speaking, Haitian, whatever nationality, what do you think would be the most important change to be made, whether it's in policy or legislation?
Wow. Well, for me, I think in terms of policies and legal updates in terms of the migration aspect is a key. Why? Because as I said, once you are regular in a country, you have access to all those things that are lacking for migrants. So understanding that my regular migration, regularizing migration benefits the social host community as well as the migrants. I think that's the most important thing because you can access to all the rights that any other local person will have. And it should not be privileged. So those things should be rights, not privilege.
Okay. Thanks so much for sharing, Gracie. And I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I know you probably have to organize and get some things done for work. So thanks so much for sitting in on this conversation with us on Member Spotlight. Welcome again to the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. I look forward to seeing some of the wonderful changes that you're going to be making, within the coalition in collaboration with the other stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation. I enjoyed this interview. Nice to see you.
You as well, Gracie. So have a wonderful day. And folks, this has been Member Spotlight, a production of the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. On our YouTube channel, you have the opportunity of visiting other members who we have interviewed in the past in our Member Spotlight podcast folder. And continue to stay tuned to the things that are happening here at the Caribbean Coalition. Coming up to the last few months of the year, of course, there'll be a lot of activities for things like the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, for the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery, and other important dates within that 16-day period. So without further ado, I say goodbye to you, Gracie, and goodbye to all of our viewers. Have a great day, everyone.